If you've ever wanted to beat the crap out of a prehistoric big bird that throws wing uppercuts and does double leg backflips with a giant warhammer made of bone, now's the time. Join me in discussing Monster Hunter Rise, out in a couple days for Windows PC. This was originally released on the Switch. Thanks to Capcom for the code, and that means, as always, I buy a copy of the game to give away to one of the watchers so that my cash is on the line just like yours. The Monster Hunter games have challenged gamers for decades, offering this eclectic mix of combining an incredible number of skills, unique weapons, and differing playstyles to take on an ever-growing assortment of forest animals that are most likely, just hanging around, sleeping or eating grass until you beat them to death. As always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. It absolutely helps the channel, but also check out some other amazing video creators out there. One of the best, who just released a top 5 for 2021, is a favorite of mine that I watch all the time, writing on games. You should check out his video. He is a spectacular creator I'd love to see more people subscribe to. Let's begin. When it comes to presentation, graphics aren't everything, but there's something. They're a window into the world. Their ability to have our imagination soar, to be captivated by the flight of some fat-bellied, rotund creature that doesn't look like its wings are even big enough to move it around. It's fighting off megalithic sloths 1 second and then turning around at the very next second to take out an entire Jurassic Park of evil hero-eating reptilians. The PC version of Rise has higher resolutions, higher frame rates, texture improvements, as well as better shadows. But you do see a bit of that old man creeping along despite him entering a new race, and that is the skeleton of the Switch version. The first part is the shadow drawing, especially in some places in the city, and despite an overall attempt to increase texture resolution in most places, you're still left with a couple spots like that nasty flowing zero detail mud texture during some enemy attacks. While Rise is not open world, its sense of verticality in the construction of its levels in comparison to World or any other Monster Hunter game is unmatched, and that feeling is awesome. It's augmented by the wire bug item that you can get as you traverse. This brings a sense of slightly more linear exploration at the starting with those smaller levels, but then blossoms out into something that's truly as surprising as a Monster Hunter game really could ever be, with you finding new secrets and new bases to unlock in whatever level you're in. But even more importantly, it's not just about moving around the levels, it's about using that wire bug to attack, but additionally using that wire bug to shortcut monsters as they try to limp away from your consistent beatdowns. While I really enjoyed World's town and hubs, the switch over to Rise's far more Asian-inspired city, though it is small, is such a uniquely different feel and location, and I didn't realize I needed it so much until I started playing it. World really did have an almost inconsiderate attention to players' time. Hey, let's build each individual place as friggin' far as possible from another one. Rise's town is small, don't get me wrong. It's like 1/10 of a mile of a crescent moon slapped down onto the ground, then looked at from the top. Its entire job is to fit the ideal of the game design I'm going to talk about later into the graphical design. Where the prior game elevated that fantasy-inspired location and terrible home renovation ideas like a home network TV show gone wrong, Rise is like, hey man, here's some rooms, and those rooms are connected to another room that might even connect back to the main hub, making traversal a breeze. Of course, you can just left-click on the trigger if you're using a controller and travel to pretty much anywhere in town if you need to. But it's not called Monster Hunter Town, and that's because it's the monsters that are also awesome, old and new. There's always something around the corner that you're not expecting when it comes to the monsters, to the wildlife, and to just everything about the exploration. Anytime you're going on a major hunt for one of the creatures, this poem comes up, and the introduction of a creature in old, scratchy film like a martial arts movie from the 70s plays. The idea, at first, can seem jarring. Barely anything else in the world actually looks like that. But when some grizzled old man starts M&M'ing the traits of monsters that are one half leech, one half albino bat, you start to appreciate that, and then you begin to anticipate them. Let's talk about performance. Built on the spine of this new engine Rise was created on for the Switch, it runs fantastically well for me. From the 1080 all the way up to the 3080. I think that would be expected. Graphical options go from internal image super sampling to a mixture of anti-aliasing setups, resolutions, various filter effects, and of course typical expected fare for PC like details and distances. Most people are going to be able to get this game running at a very quick clip regardless. Loading times are insanely fast. There are absolutely no issues when going from location to location on even the lowest performant SSD. It's just momentary, and on an NVMe, it's almost instant. Now, as a package, Rise may not have that big bustling overworld that World did, but it does ship you off to some tremendous looking locations, and in a strange way, the restrictions that we see here have blossomed up in Rise in the gameplay section. It's why Rise scored so well when it came out on the Switch. It does actually make you pay attention more to the moment-to-moment locations that you're in. Weapon animation and character animation are still over the top. I love them. Some people may not like them, and let's be honest, there's the occasional moment where a character pulls off a move and then pauses for trying to calculate wall sun prime numbers. And the feeling of weight is directly translated here. Texture work and overall design that we consistently see in the Monster Hunter games is on full effect, but don't really go into this expecting an exact sequel to Monster Hunter World, because it's not. But not being a sequel doesn't mean it doesn't have some familiar bits and some expectations that are met or maybe exceeded. It can be surprising, but the sound in Monster Hunter Rise is not surprising. It's
Elder Fugan, we did like you asked.
Oh, Minoto. Thank you.
It's mostly the same sounds we've expected from the Monster Hunter games. There's no real unique bits here because of the way that the monsters are actually put in the game world. There isn't a lot of times where there's sort of a requirement of high fidelity in your 3D channeling, though admittedly, if you're somebody who doesn't use the lock-on, there will be times when you can hear a creature getting ready to attack you from behind. And that can be very beneficial for you to make sure that you're dodging at the correct time. As a package, it's not bad sound design, but there's nothing really surprising or unique here. Music. This is a part where I wasn't in love with Monster Hunter Rise. Though there's very different music in some of the areas, one of the problems that you're going to run into is the main location has this over-the-top vocal presentation. It's basically a character who's singing, and after a while, once you continue to go back to Rise's main location over and over and over and over again, I would have loved to have seen far more music tracks there, and this is a problem that's happened in their other games. There's some cool battle music, overall not necessarily something that you're going to sit and say, I need to listen to this outside of playing the game. I would have liked some more exploratory tracks that just sort of filtered up and let me feel like I was actually going around picking up the different items in the game world, and there was a nice bit of musical presentation to go along with that. And while it is there, it's just pretty lean. Another thing that doesn't pop up is voices. Well, popping up text happens, but not voices. There's barely any in this game. There's a couple cutscenes, and even in the cutscenes, some of those aren't voiced, other than, as I said, the M&M moments where somebody's out there describing the various different attributes of a new monster you're hunting. When they're voiced, they're also not necessarily the best in the game. This is not the same kind of game like World either. In fact, the story's truncated a great deal compared to World, which does have you interacting with other characters more at its start. But also, it carries the same weaknesses. The Monster Hunter games have always been hit and miss with this. A little bit rat-a-tat-tat. You can never tell when you talk to somebody if they're going to say one word and then just move on with all text, or they're going to talk all the way through it, and when they do, if you want them to. Voice, mediocre. Gameplay, not mediocre. So Monster Hunter Rise, it starts you out multi-weapon murder trucking, thundering through native forest, recreating the part where Bambi's mother dies again and again and again and again. Where Rise massively diverges is in its opening, which after a cutscene or two probably is the fastest let's do this moment translated to any Monster Hunter game ever. You're no longer some brain-damaged Highlander consistently starting each game by naming your character the same name, then having to relearn everything from the get-go. Well, you do have to actually relearn some stuff, but at the very least, you're kicked off into conflicts much more quickly, which is nothing but a positive. But it also opens up those quests far more quickly. That's a good thing about Monster Hunter. It's always been about joining the other fat pigs, tearing best nut shish kebabs apart, and then hunting like extinction-leveled events with brains, and you get to do that. It starts with this story about a cycle of rampaging beasts that attack the town, and that cycle is repeating itself now, and who could blame them? You show up and murder more wildlife than a Chinese fishing fleet with its GPS turned off. You would assume somebody's going to be mad about it. Unfortunately, this also can lead to a series of pop-ups at the starting for tutorials that continue to pop up and up and up and up. While a lot of gamers forget that not everybody's played a Monster Hunter game, Capcom seems to realize this with a relentless information pop-up scheme. It feels like you logged into an old GeoCities or AOL account. Somehow they programmed in the equivalent of being in a classroom, and the teacher finishes up and asks, does anybody have any questions? And one dude just keeps raising his damn hand. Regardless, Rise is a game that does understand that you want to be a hunter and you go out there. Even making money in this game seems a bit easier. For example, collecting stuff within the game world is now more convenient than it's ever been in prior titles. The upgrades, many of which you would have normally sat and tried to figure out when you were at your home base, can be collected in the game world while riding on the back of your dog. So that means that as you go to hunt some creature, you're always consistently grabbing different stuff on the ground. Those can be temporary or permanent bonuses, or, as always, crafting materials. But this allows for you to set up this cool pattern where you know where an enemy is when you jump into the game, and you can sort of identify what you consider to be a really good pattern of pickups you can get prior to encountering them. And that's also where this new wire bug item comes in. And I'll talk about this here as well as in the actual combat in a second. The wire bug allows for you to travel around the game world using the left trigger on a controller and right trigger to shoot out this wire bug, and allows for you to traverse using wall running as well as leaping to get to new locations. As you find some secret locations, you can apply a wire bug permanently to that spot, and you're going to quickly find yourself moving vertically everywhere, because not only can the wire bug be used to jet you around the location, but you can also attach it to creatures to not only ride them Werven style, and I mean fully ride them and go around and bash into other creatures, but also the ability to just mix and match it with combinations. You can also, when you get hit out of the air, use it to stop yourself from landing on your butt. And that's when combat, as you guys know, Monster Hunter Rise games have always been known for, shows its complexity. It's always been about going out there, upgrading your armor, upgrading your weapons, and going out to kill more creatures so you can fuck up Yogi Bear and get more items and more weapons and start it all over again. And that's where Monster Hunter Rise works. It works because it instantly puts you into the game. You're able to jump out there and open up quite a bit of quests right away, whether they're normal hunter level quests or they're village collection quests, or they're actually just hunt quests themselves that allow for you to run around and just take out different creatures. You go out, you take out a monster, find all the information that you need in your note section for where the enemy can take more damage from whatever weapon that you choose to attack them with. You go out there, you smash the crap out of them and collect whatever pops out. While collection is always the name of this game, complexity is where Rise excels, as I said, and it has a lot. It's not just the wire bug. It's the fact that all the weapons have their skills and they can be upgraded. They have their own bonuses. They have their own things that do more damage. Then you have the enemies where different body parts are more susceptible to different attacks from different weapons. For the chance of breaking off an item versus just killing the creature, you can also trap the monsters with various traps. And trapping is a huge bonus here because sometimes trapping a creature is going to result in items that don't necessarily drop when you normally just kill them or smash off a tail, and it adds a little bit more to that collection if that's something that you like. Now, regardless of which of the 14 weapons you choose, and regardless of which of the armor you get, there's a bevy of options that you can have and mix. And one of the big changes here are switch skills. These are weapon skills. You can actually change what attacks the weapon do. Some of them have 2, some of them have 3 different switch skills that you can unlock, which change the actual gameplay of weapons that you're familiar with. You can also register the loadout for almost everything in this game, your bags, your armor, your weapons, so switching in and out of various sets is incredibly fast depending on what hunt you want to do. If you're up against a creature that's immune to water, switching out your weapons and your armor to take them out and go skull cracking isn't hard at all. This also allows for you to adjust your pets as well and what they can do. Combat continues to be a cross between incredibly basic and incredibly complex. With those switch skills, they can take a basic weapon and sort of add this odd mix in the middle of it. Armor and pets mixed together for some incredible synergy if you do it right. For example, I had some armor that increased my own health, but I had a pet dropping health all over the ground, and I had another skill for a dodge that was almost instant, meaning every single fight, even against the most dangerous creatures, getting into and out of the healing zone, which is much faster than drinking a potion, became this natural mechanic and not one that was necessarily explained to me as a player. And this can happen with all the weapons. There's so many combinations. You can play this for years and never come up with all of them. So I've always liked these games. They experiment, but it's not to a specific in-game armor where everyone can look the same like an MMO, but instead the player's own play style. And you can make some weird ones and some that don't work the best, depending on the weapons. Weapons such as a longsword, one of the weapons that I actually sort of like. It's got a good number of moves at the start, and it's just fun to use. Really does overall skew a bit more towards the skills that you're going to put on it later on, though, and which of those weapons that you want versus it when you go against different enemies. Anything that's overly complex, when you do add the wire bug on top of it, allows for combinations and just crazy stuff, and then you add the switch skills on top of that. Something like the charge blade, which requires a bit more finesse and a bit more understanding, does incredible damage and allows for you to build up your combo meters quite quickly, but you start mixing in the different skills from your creatures, the switch attacks, and suddenly 2 people who have the same exact stuff don't play exactly the same. A good idea of a switch skill for me is normally with the longsword, you just have your multiple attacks and you've got a special. But one of the specials that you can get with a switch skill is an attack that starts from far off, slides toward the enemy, hits them, and no matter if you're moving or not, it deals a number of swift cuts to them. It's awesome, and it just changed up the way that felt. And because of some of the other bonuses I had, there was a bit of a chance of stun there, and occasionally you'd end up knocking the creature on its butt. Now, pets aren't just for taking into the field. You can send them to a dojo to learn more and upgrade on their own, and each has their own series of skills you can mix and match. You can hire more if you want. Those additional pets can either go with you into battle, having their own skills, like I said, or they can be sent out to go trading for new items. So if you can't seem to find an item in the game world, you may be able to send a pet out to actually trade for it. They'll disappear for a little while, come back with those items, and maybe you'll be able to mix or create something you couldn't prior. The first time you see a cat leap into a submarine to trade for dinosaur poop is a pretty unique moment. Later on, you unlock the Meowcenaries, which is a group that you end up using any pets that aren't actually busy at the time they go out, and you can identify specific paths that they will take through a level. They'll go out on their own and collect items and come back. For newer gamers, Monster Hunter Rise is going to offer the ability to jump in quickly, get into battles quickly, and see what the game's about. At the same time, it may also cause a newer gamer to grab whatever weapon they think looks cool and leap in and get absolutely smoked. You should take the time to understand how weapons work. Also, there's a training center. It opens up a little bit later, and getting to it is a bit more cumbersome than I remember the other games being. Additionally, the ability to stun a creature, leap on its back, and attack enemies allows for you to just go rodeo riding around, smashing into bad guys. It's very cool. While Monster Hunter Rise is following that basic formula of the prior games, the group hunts, solo hunts, all the different things to collect, the items and freeform exploration, as well as these changes to the very combat itself, make it feel really good, whether you're brand new to this or whether you're not. If there's one thing I didn't love in this game, it's the Rampage missions. These are like that major battle that happened in Monster Hunter Rise with you setting up customizable weapons to take out attacking monsters and getting tons of ingredients, and you have to sit back and just sort of shoot them. It's not necessarily engaging, nor is it really something that felt like it was actually improving the story, even though it was a major component. When it comes to multiplayer, it lets you leap in just as normal. You group up, you help other people, you take on more difficult quests, pretty much exactly as expected. For fans of the series itself, those who've played the many other games, Rise still has a ton to offer. It'd be easy to compare it to World, and at the very least, the location is pretty small. It's a little crunched, but exploring with the wire bug and understanding verticality and the ability and the mobility that wire bug offers in combat as well as just in movement. And I can guarantee you pretty soon you start to realize there is a finesse to Monster Hunter Rise that didn't exist in prior games. And that right there can bring us a bit of the problem too. For all of its offerings up front, Monster Hunter Rise, especially in the middle and at the end, can feel a tiny bit unsurprising because you do get so much at the starting, where the other games a lot of times had you go through that slog of grinding just to get the smallest thing. A lot of those things are at the very least unlocked earlier in Rise. Additionally, it's not that difficult, and I gotta say this. You have so many attacks, friends, power-ups, upgrade, pets, weapons, and styles that it feels like you're held back a grade from school on accident, and so you're just big kid punching the bejesus out of monsters a good deal easier in this game than the past ones. Its difficulty in the starting couple of hours is just not as high as the other games, and that might be a bonus for you. When you talk about the fun factor as the package, it's got an incredible amount to offer in Monster Hunter Rise. And there's a reason why this game is so popular. It does a good deal of different bits with monster hunters that we've seen in the past, changes it up, but still allows for you to build on whatever experiences you had in the past. It also doesn't leave newcomers behind. It's the exact same kind of fun you have always seen in a Monster Hunter game, with verticality and a fluidity to movement that we haven't seen before. But I'm not going to lie, new player can come in here and may look at this and be like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Check your journal. Yes, the game has a ton of tutorials, and those tutorials can have 3-4 pages at least. You can go in and look at a monster and think you've got all the data and realize you can hit the right bumper and see even more data, but just be patient with it. There's a lot going on here. The ability for 10 people to build something and probably not fight exactly the same with the switch skills is phenomenal. Having the ability to ride around on your dog is such a plus. The Palamute, just in case somebody's thinking I don't know the name, I just don't like it. It also has all the DLC from the Switch version, which is just a blast. There's a ton here. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touched again rating scale. This is definitely a buy. It's well worth it. It's a different style title, and I can certainly see some people looking at it and thinking, But in many ways, there's a lot of titles we've seen like this. Usually it goes the opposite way, where the game is a little bit more linear and then goes open world. We saw that with Monster Hunter World. Now with Monster Hunter Rise, we're seeing verticality added into such a level, it's phenomenal. The ability to use a wire bug, run up the side of a mountain, leap off, target an enemy, and smash down onto him just feels so different. And even though there are so many differences, there's so many similarities. The ability for you to ride around on a creature is here, but it's augmented to such a level that you can just thunder ass through it, smashing into bad guys. You still have two enemies come together, but you always know back in the side of your brain that you could possibly stun one of them, leap onto it, and possibly kill two major monsters. I hope you guys enjoy Monster Hunter Rise. If you get a chance, subscribe, check out Patreon. It absolutely helps in this day and age when everything's just completely crazy. Give it a thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if you don't. Peace out.